The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
You're on mute, my dear. Yakking and like.
I can hear myself.
We couldn't hear you. And said Michaela's so nice enough to let you know. And I was just like, let's see what this St. George's person's going to say.
No, that's definitely computer issues. I definitely was not on mute. So it's definitely my computer holding me back.
You was.
It said mute.
It was the computer. I'm telling you, it wasn't me. It's the I didn't do anything. The computer wasn't allowing me to be great. Obviously, you guys know. So on that note, before we even welcome today's, so remember, I took my laptop to the store, took it to the hospital last week, exploded on me. So I was supposed to receive it back on the 22nd, which was yesterday. So, they send you this thing so you can track your laptop, and it kept saying picked up, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, they had not been able to locate my laptop, folks, right? So my laptop's been missing. So finally yesterday, they sent me something saying, oh, your laptop has now arrived to Apple for repair. The day it was supposed to be returned to me. So my question is, well, where was the laptop the entire time? Folks, it's Friday, July 23rd. The day after I was supposed to receive my laptop. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House, One Communications Vendors. I'm Jamal Hartman. She's Michaela Ian, and that's the Somerset fan, Sherry Vanderpool over there. Sorry, I didn't mean that. Our sister, my dear friend, Sherry Vanderpool, the Somerset fan. Liana Lambert will be with us in a bit.
Ooh, the energy and the shade. That's all right. I'm got my Lisa quote jam curls going on you and everything else, and it's gonna be all right. Okay, it's gonna be all right. Somerset always looks good.
Like the curls, yeah. So
thank you.
Does that mean you've been having a great week, Sherry?
I did. Last weekend I went whitewater rafting. I survived damn rivers. I survived. It wasn't too many, of us on there, and we all came back in one piece.
You got in a river?
I got in a river. And the funny thing is that if you've ever done it before, they would this is where you get end up, and all I saw was rocks. We get up there, somebody overslept and didn't turn on the water. True story. So we had to wait for the water to come and fill up the river, the dam to be opened and, fill up the river. But it was fun. It was adventure. Fun. It was an adventure. It was fun. You got to try it. You got to try it once.
Could you see your feet?
Yeah. We was in a boat, we was in a boat and
what
everything.
What was this river called?
Oconee in Tennessee.
Oh, so it's not that one in Georgia that everyone's been talking about. They have it's ghosted and it's water Lake Lanier or something like that.
Lake Lanier. I'm not sure of Lake Lanier.
Yeah, apparently it's haunted or something.
Yeah, too many people's died over there.
And it was a video going viral. I don't know if you guys saw it a couple of weeks ago. Some girl was is it called twerking when they do the booty thing?
Yes, and she fell between the two. But I squawked. Okay.
See,
not laugh. I squawked.
And I watched it about 4 times.
I didn't know if we could laugh yet, though, because I didn't know if she would say. But anyway, look, good morning to everyone. Another good one today. Nhuri Bashir is stopping by. Nhuri, actually, look, he's got an incredible story. I can't wait to discuss it with him publicly. So stay tuned for that. The Daily Play brought to you by Heineken 0.0 is the feud. So number one answers only. But to folks, we have an important conversation to have. Look, last night there was a video, I'm going to say, by the Ministry of Education, and people are up in arms, my friends. Let me just say this before we even get into the conversation.
Get into it.
Michaela's probably going to yell at me, and Sherry, I don't know where you stand yet.
Okay.
But when it comes to history and holding on to stuff, I don't care. When it comes to school, when it comes to the education component, I care very much. I care about the, what children are able to learn, how they're able to learn it. But I'm not interested in saving buildings for the sake of saving buildings.
Right.
No. So anyway, if you don't know what I'm talking about, basically the minister announced that there will be some school closings. Off the top of my head, I'm going to go off the top of my head. My former primary school, Prospect, which I can care less about, supposed to be closing. I just don't care. Like, honestly, folks, I don't care. West End, which the public locals up there are very upset about. One of the best schools in Bermuda, I'm hearing, St. George's Prep is on the list. Very sad. Hopefully they go private because I think they are in that position where they have board of directors. Northlands Primary, where, it was a high school when I went there, but converted to primary. Gilbert Institute, that's one, right? Gilbert Institute.
My alma mater.
What, Heron Bay?
Gilbert Institute, sir.
Oh, Gilbert. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, we went there back then in the 70s.
I didn't know. No, my baby sister went there as well. So Gilbert Institute, Heron Bay. Did I miss any? St. David's Primary, another one. St. David's Primary.
Yeah.
So the question for you, the audience, and everyone is: what are your thoughts about the ministry, the government, closing down these schools?
Yeah, it's. On one hand, I do not have a dog in this fight because I didn't go to public school. I could care less, on one hand. On the other hand, my son went to St. George's Prep. My father went to St. George's Prep. My Nana always, I don't want to say talk bad about prep. That's not a fair statement. But basically, back then, she couldn't go because it was like a white school, right? And so when I said, I'm going to put my son in St. George's Prep, it was kind of like, are you sure about that? But Amari did St. George's Prep was fantastic. Mary Lodge was the principal there for 17 years. Incredible woman. I love Mrs. Lodge. So it just seems strange to me that they would close down the school that performs well year after year after year in favor of East End. I don't know. It's just, and I feel you, Jamal, in terms of it's just a building. On one hand, it really is just a building. And honestly, I remember, 2021. So back in 2009, I was an education reporter at Royal Gazette, and a memo leaked about the same sort of thing back when Al James was the Minister of Education. And so we ended up getting ahead of it, and I did a sit down with him, and they were going to close a bunch of schools back then. And it was met with, oh no, we can't close schools, can't close the schools. But we have to remember, Bermuda's birth rate declines year after year after year. Schools, especially, I know St. David's Primary for a fact, they have 12, 15 kids per class in a whole school.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of this is expensive. The buildings are old. Does it really make sense to keep them open when we don't have that many children in the actual classes?
I don't know. I just have mixed feelings about it. Gilbert Institute's on the list, so I have a whole, issue about that. But in addition to, is smaller classrooms better? For the kids that we have, of course, going on today. The Hill school system and the Hill setup to me is needs to be revamped. I want to go back to high schools of how they were, where you went to a school that was for your academics, not necessarily where you lived. And I hear that they're phasing out the middle schools at some point as well, which like we should have just never went to it. That's my opinion. But nevertheless, but I don't know. I don't know if it makes any sense to me. And I get that it's just a building, but you having one-on-one learning, smaller classrooms and all of those kind of things. What about those values that will do well for kids that need that smaller situation? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
audience, real quickly, apparently people have a lot to say. Nachika Trot, Michaela.
In my opinion, we need to close some primary schools. It's a hard decision, but it had to be made. Decisions such as these will not please everyone. Yeah?
definitely.
Chocolate Lovely Lines. She says, we don't have the numbers to sustain these schools. Sean Smith, Sherry.
What are their plans for these buildings once they are closed? There is still a cost associated with them. And I asked that same question, like, what are we doing? I hear that they're doing, what is it? An alternative school, auxiliary school, something that they called it with one. But what about the other schools? Are we going to make them into trade schools for some of these young adults? Like what we're doing?
I mean, for me,
let me just, because I definitely want to respond to Elmore. Elmore Warren, and going to go back to Michaela's comment as well about dog nut in the fight. But Elmore Warren says, Mel, you cannot say you care about education and create private schools out of good school. Examine thought, beloved. And there you go, Jamel. That piece of history makes a difference. What Michaela said about her granny. Honestly, Elmore, I don't look to schools as education. I think one of the biggest misconceptions, especially in the Black community, is that we align education with schooling, and it's not one and the same to me. I think the greatest form of education actually takes place outside of the classroom. There are things that the way the system's set up has never really been in the best interest of Black children. Someone said yesterday, integration may have been the worst thing. There have been things said over the years that biggest problem is sending our children to our enemies to get an education. These are conversations we don't have because our thought, our conditioning makes us believe that schooling is the way. The only thing school has done, and I'm going to pick on Berkeley because I know we have a lot of Berkeleyites in the audience, right? Berkeleyites have probably the greatest pride. When I look at countries, I think Jamaicans have the greatest pride when it comes to, islands. I think Berkeleyites have the greatest pride when it comes to schooling. My challenge to Berkeleyites, if it's so great, why don't we have more people's pharmacists of the world? Why the Bermuda's education system has done well to train Black children to be employees. And that's it. It's trained us to be employees, to go do this for others. So to me, if we're about change in education, Elmore, and this is not just directed to you, burn down the damn system. Now, to Michaela's point earlier, which I highly disagree with, is my dog's not in this fight. Oh, yes, it is, Kales. Your dog, I think I don't have children in the education system. I don't live in Bermuda, but my dog is in this fight because at the end of the day, we wake up every morning to do this show, and our dog is in this fight from that standpoint. So I just want to clarify: this is a fight that we've been fighting for generations, and there's going to be 100 people that have 100 different views on what education is, how it should look, and how we should move forward with it. But what I will say on this is that I'm more concerned or interested in what are they going to do that will improve the conditions for the student. And I think what Summer says right here really kind of sums up my thought on the decline in birth rate. Our birth rate may be declining, but private schools are expanding. So what's really driving the lack of enrollment?
This is what I was just going to talk about. I was literally just going to bring this up because for me, if I didn't live in St. George's, my oldest son would not have gone to private school. I mean, would not have gone to public school. I live in St. George's. St. George's Prep is the best primary school on the island. I was able to enroll him there. My youngest son is going to Bermuda Institute next month. All of my friends, their kids are in private school. whether they're 5, whether they're older, whatever. So that's definitely a conversation because, like Tamara said, the private schools are expanding. So is it a lack of faith and trust in the Ministry of Education? Or is it just kind of like, you know what, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to ensure that my child gets a good education, and I believe that's in private school.
Yeah.
Well, and I
You
think
know?
that's the thing that's been drilled into us for many years, that private is better and has always been better. Whereas in other countries, the neighborhoods that you live in, with the schools that are in those neighborhoods, you try to drive and be in those. All schools are good because all neighborhoods are good.
Yeah.
But if we are conditioned to believe that private is better, then we are going to decline in the public school system. Why don't we put money into ensuring that our teachers are well equipped for what it is that we're needed? Because a lot of the public teachers go into private. So if they're good enough to teach in private, what is going on in the public school that it is? Because they're teaching those same teachers are teaching your child in BI.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what is
it's
it?
interesting. And that's why like a school like St. George's Prep has been so successful, because they have their own board. They're able to handpick their teachers, you know? So they have the teachers that they want, what they deem the best to teach their students. Whereas other public schools don't have the luxury of hand selecting who teaches the school,
But they're poaching our public school teachers as well. Because most of those public school teachers, I mean private school teachers that are not that are Bermudian, started off in the public school system. So, you know, again, if they are good enough to teach in public, they're good they're good enough to teach in private, they're good enough to teach in our public school. But what is behind that is not keeping them there is more of the question.
Yeah.
And Michaela, just a question, because you just shared an experience. What have you noticed? And we're going to get to the audience. I know a lot of comments coming through. We will finish the convo. But what do you see as a parent from when your son was in public school to private school? Like, what's the biggest thing that you can share, that you can say to the Minister of Education? This is what I've noticed. Maybe we should adopt this in a public school.
I mean, to me, I will say I don't see much of a difference. It was a very seamless transition from public to private. And I think that's testament to how St. George's Prep is run. So I think if he had gone to a different school, there might have been a little bit of a difference. But I don't really think that there's much of a difference in that regard. I will say that at Bermuda Institute, I chose Bermuda Institute because, well, I went to Bermuda Institute. My family is Seventh-day Adventist. But Bermuda Institute churns out Black boys who go to university and do well. That's what Bermuda Institute does. There are many very successful people, Black men in our community, who graduated from Bermuda Institute. And so for me, that was the deciding factor in that, because I have Black boys.
Okay. Got you. Let's go to the audience. Kivani Haynes says, I'm not connected to building schools. I just want quality public education. Dr. Kendra Lee Pierman Sherry.
I agree with school closures, but what plans with the curriculum and the best practice for the students?
Tamara, Michaela.
Also, schools function as community connectors. Once you plot where the remaining schools are in relation to the extremes of the parishes, it's a long way to go for many, often against traffic. Yeah.
Terry Sister says, that's all school systems. Jamal, re-schools. Yeah, I say burn the system down. When I say system, I'm talking about the entire thing. I'm not talking about one school. I don't see. Let me be clear. And I think Eugene Johnson said this for years, and I don't think it really clicks with Black people. There's really no difference between public school and private school. It's really no difference, folks. The objective is the same, especially when it comes to Black students. Once we get that through our heads, I think we will understand the problem that we have to solve. That's the real of this. No, there may be a better environment in the private institution. There may be a better opportunity to succeed, right? In being a better trained individual and a better employee when you get older. But the overall objective is very similar in terms of the results of, Michaela just said there's great Black men, and we can name a lot, that have come out of Bermuda Institute. But how many of them own a bank in Bermuda, an insurance company in Bermuda, a gas station, a grocery store. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I was once told by someone, remember there was a boom back in the late 90s, early 2000s, where Black people started sending their children to Soltis.
Mm-hmm.
And the parents of these children were, they were maybe hairstylists, but owned the salons. And you couldn't go to Soltis talking about you want to be like your mama. You went to Soltis, you had to speak and think like you were going to be a doctor or a lawyer.
Or run a company. Like my uncle Gil Tucker.
Yeah.
So Gil Tucker is my uncle. He was the first Black boy to go to Soltis. And then his brother, my Uncle Craig, a couple of years later, went to Soltis. And they've both done very well for themselves. I'm not saying that they are, the exception to the rule or whatever, but I think in their parents' minds, this was what was best for their children, and I'm sure that set them on the path that they ended up on, where they were very successful in their careers,
My sister as well was one of the first groups to do the girl IB program and stuff like that. So just very interesting how it's all changed.
Yeah. Tamara Richardson, Michaela.
Buildings never mattered. After slavery, we gained literacy rapidly with far less. It's past time to deal with the other components honestly. Name a curriculum that perhaps hasn't kept pace with technological advances, etc.
Interesting. Carla, John, Sherry.
I've taught at both public and private schools, and the biggest difference I noticed was that private school parents are extremely involved in everything since they are paying for it. She is absolutely right about that. And I was going to say in regards to the private schools, when you say what's the difference, there's more, there's just more, you know what I mean? I had a godchild to go from private to public, and the energy that he received from one school to another was vastly different. He indicated of just having more opportunities, more clubs, more things to do, more things that he was interested in, rather than in public school, those opportunities weren't also made available. Not to say that they couldn't be, but they weren't made available.
We are out of time, so we have to keep our comments brief as we go through the audience. Chocolate Lovely Line says, but private is not better. I say this as a graduate from a private school who came from the public school. I learned things later at the private school, which I hadn't learned early on in public. I do wish, I mean, Eugene Johnston, I admire him, and I think it would do a lot of us well to kind of listen to some of the things he said about education over the years. I'm not putting him on a pedestal, but I think when I read the comments from the audience, and I think we skip over so many things that really are the root of the issue. Terry Tukul says there are socioeconomic issues that impact education system. And I don't think we glide over that, especially, again, listen to people like Eugene Johnston. This is what we've been touching on for years when we've been speaking about this here. I think the problem is the conditioning is very deep. I think with Bermuda, what the government has done, now let's say the PLP got in 1998, right? I see it no different from the airport with the PLP, right? All this noise about the education system, they got in, and now, what's 98 to now? 30-something years?
23 years.
Yeah, whatever. 23 years later, they're now going to move to, I ain't a math guy. But anyway,
30-something years.
Still haven't done anything, right? Worthy of improving the system.
Yeah.
No different from the airport.
Yeah.
Complained about it, this, that, and the other. Airport's here, and suddenly it's not an issue anymore. My point is this, folks. I feel like there are a few things that become political, and they should never be. One is healthcare. The other is education. At the end of the day, these conversations are beyond the building of a school. They are really about not what happens in the classroom necessarily, but what happens in the classroom that's going to produce our environment 5, 10, 15 years later from now. Is this plan in the best interest of Bermuda? I think consensus-wise, I think everyone thinks some schools need to close. I think that's the consensus, right?
Yeah.
I think finding that middle ground of which schools should close, what's the purpose, as someone said, what's the plan for the buildings, what do we do with the buildings once they're closed? Government needs money. Is the plan to just close schools and make some money by selling off these properties? Obviously they can't sell some properties because I believe a school like St. George's Prep doesn't belong to the government. If I'm if I'm not mistaken. But
Right.
at the end of the day, I think finding out what the plan is to improve the state is the overall objective. And if they can produce that to us, if they can tell us what that is, and I want to touch on something Sherry said before we bring in Leanna into the conversation. You said something that I don't think people realize, and it made me sick to my stomach when I lived in New Jersey. School systems in the U.S., based on where you live, is apparently not school systems, but what they call them, districts. Apparently, based on where you live, the higher you pay taxes, the better the school. If that's not this thing ever. So basically, a child who pretty much their parents are not well off or not even middle class, they're gonna get a poor formal education because they don't live in an area like. Folks, this is deep. This is deep, and we probably need a show like yesterday to really get to the depths of it and really understand it. Leanna probably has an opinion on this.
And before she slips in, let me just clarify. When I was mentioning that, I meant in different countries. So when you talk about the European countries, their schools are based off of your neighborhood community with the premise that every neighborhood is good. So every school that you would attend to would be good, not necessarily in the US.
Well, in the European countries, I think like especially the Scandinavian, don't they have the best like formal education?
Yeah.
So, I mean, but hey, Sherry, when it works good other places, why do that? It makes no sense to do what.
None at all.
Lee, what you smiling about?
First off, I'm in my feelings this morning because you treated me like a stepchild. Yep. Sip that tea. Yep.
What happens when you're St. George's?
And usually I wouldn't sit here and get at my fellow St. Georgian. However,
that bus
he left me out this morning. Like I feel.
So what she's saying, folks, is Leanna actually wasn't in studio before the show, and I forgot that she didn't have the information to get in, and so I catch that out. That bus. I'm usually the one doing the throwing, but she definitely threw me just now. Yeah. But Lee, look, we I've got scrapes on my knees from that. Well, folks, let's get to the news break. We have Nhuri Bashir coming up. Lee, you went to Work Academy, right?
I did, but I actually went to Prospect Primary first. So I had a chance to get both public and private education. And I have to agree with you in some regard. No real connection to the building. I want a proper education that's going to prepare my future children for the real world, the things that we encounter on a daily basis. So curriculum, I am for. Buildings, not so much.
Yeah, a public Montessori maybe. Lee, over to you.
Thanks, Jamal, Michaela, and Sherry. TGIF to everyone. We have made it to the end of the week, and I hope everyone is ready for some much needed rest this weekend. I'm Leanna Lambert, and it's time for our daily hour news break. Now, as we have been discussing, it has officially been announced that the island will see 8 of its long-standing primary schools closed in government's proposed shakeup to the island school system. Schools on the list to be shut include St. David's Primary, St. George's Preparatory School, Northlands Primary, Gilbert Institute, Heron Bay Primary, Port Royal Primary, Prospect, and West End Primary. Now, these cuts mean that there will be just a single primary school in every parish apart from Pembroke, which will have 2. Education Minister Diallo Rebane confirmed that Prospect Primary will now become a signature school, while Elliott was granted a pass and will continue as a primary school. Mr. Rebane stressed that the closures will be phased in over 3 to 5 years, and the reason behind the closures was due to declining enrollment numbers, meaning there was no longer any need to have 18 primary schools, and that resources could be used more effectively if they were concentrated on fewer schools. Now, the minister stressed that the decision to move ahead with the overhaul was made only after extensive consultation with parents and other stakeholders. In other news, police last night released an image of 2 people suspected of being behind a brazen daylight shooting at Darrell's Wharf in Warwick that left a 56-year-old man with multiple injuries. Now, what police labeled as a quote-unquote senseless act of extreme violence happened at 7:30 p.m. on June 16th. The suspects fled the scene and headed west along Harbor Road. The rider was described as wearing a dark colored top and light pants, while the passenger, the suspected gunman, wore a blue jacket and dark pants. Now, anyone who has seen the vehicle or who has any information should call the main police telephone number or the Confidential Crime Stoppers hotline. Visitation requirements at the hospital are now being welcomed after a decline in active COVID-19 cases on the island. Bermuda Hospital's board's chief of staff, Wesley Miller, said that the board was pleased to allow more visitation, but it still remained prepared for another outbreak. The BHB has relaxed its previously strict requirements and said that visitors can now be allowed in the acute care wing, intensive care unit, maternity wing, and agape house for certain periods throughout the day, but guidelines will still be put in place. Now, overnight stays will also be allowed, but only for special circumstances. Patients are also now allowed to have another person accompany them if needing to visit the emergency department. Mask wearing, proper distancing, and temperature checks will continue, however, to be maintained before entering the hospital. And Bermuda rower Dara Alizade's Olympic debut ended with a fourth-place finish in the men's singles sculls preliminary heats at the Sea Forest Waterway in Tokyo last night. Now, he completed the 2,000-meter distance in 7 minutes and 34.9 seconds, but needed to place in the top 3 in his heat to book an automatic place in the quarterfinals on Monday. Now, he will return to the water today for a second chance where 14 of the 32 rower field battle. Well, they will battle it out for a chance to fill 6 places remaining in the 4 quarterfinal heats. For today's weather, we have a high near 84 and a low near 75 degrees. It will be a bright start to today, but nearby showers will turn to rain and possible thunder later this evening. Some of these showers could merge into longer spells of rain at times with the odd rumble of thunder and gusty winds. The breezy and occasionally wet conditions will continue at times throughout the weekend. That's all for our daily hour news break, but a friendly reminder to the motoring public as the Bermuda Police Service begin their 10-day-long sobriety checkpoints beginning this evening, which will continue through August 1st. Checkpoints are taking place in 7 parishes beginning tonight, so we urge everyone to drive safely and with caution as you move throughout the island leading up into the holiday. Let's head back to Jamal, Michaela, and Sherry in the studio for today's Daily Focus.
All right, Lee, thank you so much for that. And next week, this time, we'll be on our way to a victory parade.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, so, yeah, Lee,
Looking forward to it.
And the
Lee, enjoy your weekend. Have a great weekend. And please be sure to save some energy for next week's celebratory weekend, okay?
Yes. Just have the music ready, Jamal. Have the music ready.
You know what? Let's go into that commercial. You know what I'm saying? Let's go into that commercial. We're going to be right back. We have Nhuri Bashir waiting in the wings, folks. Get ready. Cut Match Fever is on the way. Stick with us.
Mom's celebrating her 70th birthday next month. Have you noticed her age is catching up with her?
Yeah. Plus, she's having a hard time getting up and around like she's used to. I would sure hate to see her fall.
At Medical House Limited, we can help make life situations easier. We have electric beds, motorized scooters, bath stools, walkers, you name it.
Mom's been real good to us. We'll get her birthday and Christmas gifts from Medical House.
Medical House has relocated next to the Dendy Town Field, number 6 Bakery Lane, Pembroke. Telephone 292-3622.
John Barrett & Son, Bermuda's favorite distributor of fine beverages, has brought us a new and refreshing thirst quencher just in time for the approaching warm weather. Hint Water in 7 luscious flavors. Hint Water is slaking the thirst of active people who need pure hydration, low on the glycemic index, and want the kind of taste experience that keeps them coming back to try the next flavor. For those who've been giving water a miss, Hint may win you over. Hint Water. No sugar, no additives, all flavor. Lynn knows. Why go anyplace else?
All right, welcome back to the big show. Michaela N, Sherry Van Poel, I'm Jamal Hartness, the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House One Communications, Lindo's, and our friends over at Channel 82, where you can stream this and many other locally produced shows. Without further ado, let's bring our guest for the day, Mr. Nhuri Bashir. Hey, man, you've probably seen Nhuri's work somewhere. I think Michaela's getting some of his work, but fantastic, awesome. I'm just going to say artist. You know, what he does, what he produces is art. Some of the things that you see, folks, some of the things that make Bermuda look, I'm not going to say better than it does, because it does look beautiful, but he can make it even better. Nhuri Bashir, folks. Good morning, sir.
Morning. Thank you for that great intro. You know, it made me feel special.
Man, look, you're going to get me in trouble because I usually say, oh, and here's such and such. But no.
Yeah, that's what I was expecting. You know, I was expecting a punch. You know, I'm a Somerset fan, so.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
I was just about to like, hi, it's my friend Nhuri, and you want to come in that violence.
I was chomping in it. I was chomping in it in my head, like, where does he lie? But I'm just gonna wait.
But you know what, Michaela? You know what? Honestly, this just reminds me, nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect.
Nobody's perfect. I still love you, Nhuri.
Everyone's fallible.
Absolutely.
But you know what the funny thing is I always get in trouble for being a Somerset fan because my grandfather is Bummy Simons, who is like one of the top St. George's players. You know what I mean? So somewhere in the lineage we split.
But what happened? Like, come on.
I have no clue.
He saw the light. He saw the red and blue. He saw the light. It's fine.
Well, you know what they say. Every family has one, but
yeah. I'll take it.
But no, look, man. Honestly, thank you for doing this. You know, we've spoken years ago when I was at tourism, had a lot of good conversations. But for those who don't know you, just speak about your background a bit, your transition to photography and entrepreneurship from the corporate sector, because it's quite an incredible story for most who don't know it.
Yeah, I mean, we briefly spoke about it earlier, but I started out working in actually law firms. My initial intention was to become a lawyer, so I started out working at Conyers and Permin, and you know, I saw what lawyers did and decided that wasn't for me. And then I applied for a job at HSBC, worked for HSBC for 5 years. Rose the ranks pretty quickly there. I kind of topped out in the product development team in the retail banking space. And, you know, my dad was an entrepreneur. He, you know, owned the Pembroke Laundromat, which is down on Parsons Road, and a number of other laundromats and also like Paget Dry Cleaners. So it was always my intention to leave the corporate world at some point. And I just chose the date of 30. You know, that's like, look, 30 years old, I'll take my last bonus and I'm going to start something. Wasn't sure exactly what it was, but people told me that my photos were good. You know, that was kind of all I had at that time. I met up with Andrew Kirkpatrick, who went to high school with me, the private school side. So some people know me from public school, some people know me from private school. I was listening in on the conversation. And he was into film and videography, and he was, you know, had kicked off a business called Burnt House Productions. And, you know, we had a chat and we were like, look, let's just join forces and try to take over the production world. And it's been history ever since then. So, I mean, we've done some amazing stuff, as you just discussed. You know, we worked a lot for tourism. We've done a lot of international stuff, you know, movies, a lot of different things. So it's been a pretty interesting ride.
I love it.
That's awesome, Nhuri. So for those of the people who are watching who don't know, tell us what you specifically specialize in, because photography is just such a large industry with many different specialties.
Yeah, so basically one of the big things when we had kicked off was we noticed that there were a lot of corporate jobs that were happening in the island, but the majority of them, they were flying in people to do them. And so basically what we did was we started assisting the international people in coming in, and that kind of shook a lot of the feathers of the local photography group. But we wanted to really figure out, like, what was the difference? Like, what did they have that the local population in photography didn't have? And we learned a lot. You know, I'm not going to say that, you know, they were better photographers or whatnot, but the systems that they had and the way that they marketed themselves was pretty strong. And so Andrew and I basically went straight for corporate. We skipped the weddings and a lot of the family-based portraiture, and we stick very heavily in like high-end hotel and tourism in that space, you know, completely. So we shoot campaign work. That's kind of our specialty. Things that are typically for international consumption.
Right. No, I love it. So what are the best campaigns that you've worked on over the past couple of years? Because I know there's been so many, and I just love for you to tell our audience.
Honestly, I mean, the campaigns, we worked on, I want to say like maybe 4 of 7 tourism campaigns, and there have been a couple of them that I thought were quite good. We also flew down to St. Lucia to do a campaign for the Sugar Beach Hotel, which is down in the Soufriere area. Beautiful, beautiful property. It's a Viceroy property. So if you go on Viceroy's website right now and look up the St. Lucia property, we shot the campaign for them. That was like uber amazing because, as Bermudians, a lot of times, we talk about how international people get treated when they come here and all that kind of stuff. But it was so awesome to be the international guy shooting somewhere else. So that was super cool. We also shot a Lifetime movie over in Scotland.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's called Christmas in the Highlands and featuring Brooke Burfitt. So Andrew and I flew over to Scotland. He was there for like a month and a half. I was there for 3 weeks. Just traversing the different areas around the country and filming all over. So I would say those are some immediate highlights, but we've shot a lot of stuff.
Well, speaking of that, in regards to people, places, and things, what are some of your favorite things to either shoot or favorite people to have shot? I mean, you haven't done me as of yet, but I'll wait.
Well, I'm just tapping into celebrity photography. So I'll be hitting you up at some point in time, So basically, when it comes to photography, and people that know me, I love things that could be controlled, and so when you have like a hotel or when you have a person or whatnot, I've shot Marcus Samuelson a fair amount. That's really cool. He's a really interesting fella, done really well for himself. And he kind of has a strong vision of who he is and who he wants to be. So working with him was quite interesting. My favorite personal photo and video shoot was with a reggae artist, Luciano. And that guy was just the most amazing person that I've ever met in life, just completely humble, played guitar for me the whole time for an hour and a half. We were together and he just serenaded his whole hit list. And, so there's, in terms of people, those are the highlights. And then we have local people like Lily Lightbourne. We did a shoot the other day. She's super professional. She knows what she's doing. And a super talented model. I work a lot with Shiona Torini, another, popular Bermudian and someone that's done extremely well for herself. So, I mean, there's a pretty long list, but I just enjoy working with cool people. I just don't like working with people that can't chill a little bit or take themselves lightly.
Well, we have the same experience. I interviewed Luciano as well, so I understand that serenade. So you've been in company of celebrities.
I am.
I love it. I love it.
How does it feel to see your work showcasing Bermuda in international magazines?
Honestly, the magazines, there's so many times when I just pick up, foreign magazines where there's a local publication inside the foreign magazines, and I see images in there that came from me, and it's just, you feel really proud. But for me, it's kind of I shoot it and forget it, and I'm always worried about the next thing, the next thing that I'm going to shoot. So there's kind of I'm done with that part and moving on. And so I look at it, but I don't. It's just I guess a lot of actors don't like to watch their films. I look at my photos, but I don't really go back and reminisce on them because a lot of times I look at them, I say I could have did something differently there, And as you progress, you start to look back on things and I could have did that so much better, So for me, it's always about the next thing.
Yeah, Sherry.
And in addition to you speaking about, all of the Bermudian, Shiona, and even, Michaela as well. But how can we showcase more Bermudian photographers? You talked about the people that are in front of the screen, but how about those behind? Because there has been an emergence of a lot of Bermudian photographers right now, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think that, Bermuda Tourism has done certain things to kind of highlight. There was I think it was Travel and Leisure that they highlighted myself, Avery Graham, Meredith Andrews, and a couple other individuals. And they've worked with different publications to get different photographers' names out there. But again, like tourism will typically put out people that they've worked with. And the challenge there is there are a lot of photographers that haven't specifically worked with tourism, and so their name might not get out there as easily, right? I think where we could celebrate each other, and this was something that came up on social media the other day. We spend a lot of time posting our own work and our own things, like our own family, our own this and that. But as a country, like where people are doing great things, it's good to share good work from other people, So Jerry, you have your own platform. Jamal, you have your own platform. Michaela has her own platform. If you see somebody that's doing awesome stuff, share their work, and put their name out there, and as a community, and you mentioned like countries or people that have a lot of pride in themselves, like I think the philosophy in Jamaica is like we celebrate ourselves first, and so if we can celebrate ourselves and celebrate each other and share people's work just for the sake of it, not because you're trying to get credit or you're trying to use their thing for your ad or whatever, like just share people's stuff because it's good, and that's I mean, I think that's how we all push forward.
Absolutely. So what advice would you have for up and coming photographers?
I would say just don't stand in your own way. I think that there's this belief that, I have to work for a long period of time to be able to do certain things. And the reality is that you just have to be good enough to do certain things, right? It's not a measure of time. Just because you hold a camera longer doesn't mean that you get better. I would just say don't stand in your own way. The people that are out there doing things are doing things because they took a step in that direction and believed in themselves and went for it. And so like Jamal had asked earlier, like I came from banking. And within like a year and a half, shooting stuff for tourism, not even a year and a half. So a lot of people were like, well, how did you, climb the ranks to be able to shoot tourism? I was like, well, I just knew that I could do it. So it's just not even a question about it. It wasn't about waiting until, someone else had finished or croaked to be able to do it. It's I can do it, and having a belief in doing it.
No, I love that because we talked earlier about like starting a business and stuff. And I love that you say that because so many people don't realize like you can bet on yourself. Like you can just decide today, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be amazing. End of story. I love that you say that.
Yeah. And just practice. I mean, at the end of the day, you got friends, you got families, you got hotels. Like if you wanted to shoot and probably stabbing myself in the foot, but if you wanted to do work for hotels or whatever, just call up the hotel and say, would you mind if I shot a room or shot this location or what? And the hotels always want new content. You know what I mean? So you can figure out whether or not you're good at it or not. You know what I mean? Like there's nobody that's going to say, no, I don't want a photo. Or very,
very true.
I'm not going to say that either.
Yeah. Well, Nhuri, I want to go back to something you said earlier, and Michaela kind of just touched on it. I think the most incredible thing about you is like you pretty much, it's risky, and this is what entrepreneurship is. It's risk, right? You pretty much said at 30 years old, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it. And I think that to me is probably the most incredible part of your story. It's like, I always said that I'm going to be retired by 40, and that's like in 2 months. And I still mean that. But people will say, well, you're still working and do that. Well, what I mean is I will not be applying for another job after the age of 40. Like my time is up. I'm sticking to that. Trust me, I'm sticking to it. So where I'm at now, whatever I'm doing now, that's what I intend to do until I'm not working anymore. Why is it important to set those kind of goals though?
I think that it's at the end of the day, you got to recognize that there's multiple types of people in the world, and that there is no right or wrong way to live, that people will choose their own path. But I think, and this goes back to some of the sentiments that you had earlier, it was like, if we want to see different segments of the community progress, then you have to take risks. You have to just try things. You have to put yourself out there. And if we don't, then you kind of stay where you're at, like if you don't risk anything, then you stand to say exactly where you are today, So I think that we just have to recognize that there are, if you do have that risk, appetite, then just go for it. You know what I mean? Like just try. Because at the end of the day, it's you don't judge yourself based on your failures in the end. You judge yourself based on the things that you tried and achieved. Because there's a million things that you'll fail at. Lord, like I don't even believe in the word failure, but like there's a million different things that you'll try that won't look successful at that period in time.
No, I love that. My friend and mentor, Gainete Jen, she always says that her whole thing is like, so you're afraid of doing something, but by not doing it, you're already in your worst case scenario. Like you're already failing because you're not doing it. So you may as well just go try.
It's like a baby not walking because they don't know how to walk. I mean, like, it's like, like how do you get to walk? You have to try. You have to fall down. You have to try. You have to fall down. And then at some point in time, you try and it works.
Well, we have to wrap it up, but I want to touch on something else because I think, we've talked about entrepreneurship and risk, right? And if we're honest, is what we do every morning or photography or the arts and entertainment isn't considered necessarily a need, right?
No.
It's not considered a need, but what you've done, and I really hope people share this because this is an incredible conversation of confidence, of like this is, it's no arrogance. Like this guy has literally just spoke. Look, I bet on myself. I took a risk and it's worked out. It didn't work out because I sat back and prayed and hoped for it, but because I had a plan and I worked for it, right? But I really want to, kind of just lay it out in terms of, what? Anybody could pick up a camera and literally go on YouTube and learn how to do it. Like what you've spoken about is you've leveraged relationships. You get work in those spaces to say, I don't want this work just because you know who I am now, but because of the quality of work I produce. And this is no shade on anyone, folks, but I simply believe that there are people, Nori's been doing this less than 10 years, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. There are people who have been doing this, right? And photography has changed so much just over the last 5 years, right?
Yeah.
Entertainment, the arts. You have people going on Canva that are doing things that it took you years to learn in graphic design school. But my point is, you have people that have been doing things for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And they think that because they've been doing it for so much longer, right? That well, I should get the job before Nori. Speak to us about how you entered into this space and what you have got going for you, going up against that kind of stuff, especially in a place like Bermuda. But the key thing that I've noticed from you before I let you answer is I always say to people, if you want to grow your brand and be successful, you have to grow beyond your environment. Speak to us.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you summed it up correctly. I mean, and I'm gonna take it point by point though. So my friend, and he used to be my manager back in the bank, Sean Dunkley, he would talk about some of the different roles in the bank, and like sometimes and this is no shade against a specific role, but you'd have a teller, and they'd say, "Well, I have 30 years experience in this, then I should be a manager, right?" And what he said to me is like, no, sometimes you have 1 day experience 30 years over. Right? If you're doing the same thing every day, then you have 1 day experience 30 years over. You don't have 30 years of experience, right? And so if you apply that philosophy to everything, right? If you do the same thing every day, you don't have 30 years experience. You don't have 40 years experience. You have 1 day's experience that you've repeated 30 days over, right? And so I would apply that to the same philosophy as you related to photography. Like if you go out and you take a picture of the clouds, and then tomorrow you take another picture of the clouds, and then the next day you take another picture of the clouds, and then you say, well, I've been taking pictures for 30 years. It's like, you haven't. You've been doing one thing 30 years over. And so you're not really progressing or growing. Growing is an expanding and pushing past, right? So if you're saying, well, this month I did a campaign where there was a local model or there was a local company, and then next I have a local company, and then I have an international model, and then the next is I have an international company and international models, and then the next is I'm running the campaign and I don't touch the cameras. Like that's growth over a period of time. And I think if you view growth in that way, where it's an expansion, it's a pushing, it's a testing of limits, then I think you view it in the right way. And I think that's kind of the core of entrepreneurship. So people will talk about entrepreneurship in various ways. So you have a mom and pop shop that sells, snacks and oranges and juices and stuff like that there for 50 years. But that's a small business. An entrepreneurial business will go from 0 to 1 million users in 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. So just looking at like what you consider entrepreneurship and how the philosophy guides what you're aiming to achieve.
Yes,
we have
I
to
love this conversation.
but we have
Love
to.
it.
It's incredible what you've been able to say in such a short space, and Michaela, I can't thank her enough because she mentioned you, and I'm like, you're damn right, get him on. Like,
Listen, Nhuri is my guy. Okay, I work with Nhuri all the time, so I was like, we need him on. Thank you.
Yeah,
well, he's my guy now too. He's my guy.
Yes. And
I just want to put it on real quick.
Out of time. Like I honestly, I'm so sorry. I don't want to get us in trouble. We are on TV. No, we have to continue the conversation some other time. So I thank you and appreciate what you've said. We have to take a commercial break. We'll be in touch because I think there's a continuation because I want to get into how you've transitioned to help others along and how you've been able to transition. You mentioned that you went for corporate rather than weddings and stuff. I want to talk about that with you. So we definitely want to have you back next month if you're free to get into that a bit more. All right?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I love it. Thank you guys so much.
All right, no problem. Nhuri Bashir, thank you so much, my friend. That was an incredible conversation. I'm so sorry, folks. I honestly, but I'm the one that gets in trouble when we go over time. So we're going to take a quick break, come back, and get right to the Daily Play.
Same smooth sounds, different name. BCG Radio. Tune in every Tuesday through Sunday at 7 p.m. Bermuda time as we bring you the love, romance, sexiness with nighttime jams. Only on your station for conversations and entertainment. BCG Radio. Download the app, available for Android and Apple devices.
All right. Thanks again to Nhuri Bashir for coming on. If you enjoyed that conversation, found the information helpful, you know what to do. Give us a thumbs up, a love, a like, and make sure you share those kinds of conversations, folks. Bet on yourself. Like I'm here with two incredible people, Michaela and Sherry, who honestly, I look to them on it. Like we have conversations off air and so things. And the reason I mention that is because the people around you, make sure you're learning from them, regardless of what titles or positions. Like seriously, folks, like it's important. And Nhuri, there's so much more conversation to have. Obviously, we're gonna have him back immediately. We're not just saying that because we need to continue to convo. So appreciate him. Sorry to cut it. We're still gonna be a bit over time, but please forgive us, Mr. Producer. It's Daily Playtime, brought to you by Heineken 0.0. Great taste, no alcohol. It's time for the feud. So this is a hard one. You guys, you know how it works. Now, if you guess the answer before them, which is pretty hard because these are two talented individuals, you got a prize. We're going to do a lot of giveaways next week as well. Hashtags, so don't worry about no giveaway today. Name something one family member might steal from another.
That's money.
Okay, that's easy. That's easy. Yeah, that was. Here we go. Now it gets difficult. Name something famous, real, or fictional named Mother Goose. Sorry, name mother outside Mother Goose. Name mother outside Mother Goose.
Mother Teresa.
Yep, she got it. Wow, I thought that would have been a tough one for you.
That was weird.
No, you confused me, young.
Last one. Here we go. Last one. This is very easy. You're getting easy ones. This is easy. You're not giving the audience a chance. Name something you see on the outside of a church. That's too easy.
A grave? Steeple?
The cross. Steeple, yeah.
No, but hell on, she got it, right? But Sharon's going like this. she said it, right? Cross. But just like, the, like.
I got it. I got it. I got it. I got it.
But Okay. Hey, Sherry, if someone's listening on the radio, like they
No,
but I get
I
it.
got it.
You got it. That was fun. What's the game where you actually use your hands anyway? You don't say it. Is it Pictionary or something like that?
Something like that.
Charades.
Yeah, charades. Yeah, she was playing charades while we were playing the feud, folks. But Sherry got it. The cross. That was pretty cool. Really quickly, in 20 seconds or less. Final thoughts on today's show. Sherry, go.
Awesome, great. The communication about schools, great conversation. Nori, like I said, holler at me for the Somerset pictures. Go ahead, Michaela.
I'm ignoring that last part. I love this conversation. I love talking about entrepreneurship, and I love how Nuri was like, you don't have to be doing this thing for a long time in order to A, get the respect, and B, get the kind of jobs that you want. Like, just go do it. Like, absolutely.
Yeah. Daily inspiration for us, Kels?
Sure do. Ready?
Ready. Make us feel good.
Life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving.
Oh, yeah.
I like that one. Folks, honestly, can't thank Nori enough. Again, great conversation. The school thing, heavily debatable. Education is a deep, deep topic. That's one that deserves a show in itself, like yesterday. Nori, we're going to have you back, more to discuss, but incredible story. We need more stories like that. Again, when you go into an area that there's not necessarily a need, for instance, but you create a need for your service, you know you are good at what you do. So, folks, I've always said about experience, right? I will never use two things to leverage anything. One, my formal education, or two, my experience. What I will use is the quality of work that I produce for people as my leverage. So if you're only leaning on formal education and experience, something tells me your work is, I can't say that word. Man, it's a morning show. Don't get me kicked off. Anyway, thanks again to our partners, Medical One Communications and Linders, for ensuring that we're able to do this with you on a daily basis. If you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel, folks. Subscribe today. Make sure you get stay up to date with what we got going on. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and I was going to say LinkedIn, Facebook, and yeah, we love you. We thank you for the support. We appreciate you, and have a great weekend, because next week this time there's no show. We'll be getting ready to celebrate our victories in Georgia. If all goes well, we'll all be back next week. The captains of both teams are going to be on Tuesday. Then on Wednesday, all of the hosts of the show, we're going to invite the audience into the studio. Until then, she's Michaela, she's Sherry, I'm Jamel. My friends, have a safe, wonderful, and great weekend. Cheers.